just address the president's comments yesterday, referring to Trump supporter as garbage. And I know he's tried to clarify that he was trying to talk about what the person said. But one, I guess I want to know, does he think less of Americans who support Trump than he does of those who do not? And two, why is he using that kind of rhetoric? How is that presidential?
So a couple of things. So just to clarify, he was not calling Trump supporters garbage, which is why he wanted to make sure that we put out a statement that clarified what he meant and what he was trying to say. And so just want to make that very clear for folks who are watching. And I just want to read that out to folks. So he was regarding to the comedian, and I quote, "I referred to the hateful rhetoric about Puerto Rico spewed by Trump's supporter at his Madison Square Garden rally as garbage, which is the only word I can think of to describe it. His demonization of Latinos is unconscionable. That's all I meant to say. The comments at the rally don't reflect who we are as a nation." And to your question, your other question that you asked, no, he does not view Trump supporters or anybody who supports Trump as garbage. That is not what he views. If the president has said this for more than 3 years now. He has said multiple times that he is a president for all. It doesn't matter if you live in a red state. It doesn't matter if you live in a blue state. He has said this himself. I have said it on his behalf. He believes that he's a president for all. And it doesn't matter who you voted for. It doesn't matter if you voted for him or not. He's a president for all. But hateful rhetoric that he hears, and this is something that we've done many times from here, we will call that out. We will call that out. And that's what the president said.
Does he have any regret for not being more, his language was not specific. It came out, if you were listening to that video.
I was in the room, Amr, I was in the room.
I'm sure, but if you were
I'm just telling you that I was in the room.
But if you were any sort of normal person listening to that video or looking at the clips online, you could come to the conclusion that he was calling, at minimum, this one man garbage, or not, if not all Trump supporters garbage. Does he regret not being more precise with his language? And does he also?
I'm waiting for the question to end, but keep going.
And I apologize.
Yeah,
the second part
ahead.
of that is, does he have any regret for how this has shadowed Vice President Harris's campaign?
So a couple of things there, because there's a lot that you laid out. Look, the president wanted to clarify because he understood that what he may have said he understood that what he was saying was being taken out of context. So he wanted to be very, very clear about what he was trying to say. And I just read that out once over. You all have the tweet or the statement that's on X. If you want to read it right now, feel free to do so. And he was talking about hateful rhetoric, and we've called out hateful rhetoric from here. We have. Obviously, this hateful rhetoric was about a particular community, a community that the Puerto Rican community. They are Americans. This is a community that he respects, and he wanted to make sure he called that out. And hateful rhetoric should be called out. It should be. But at the same time, the president is a president for all. He will continue to do so. He will continue to serve for everyone. I want to step back for a second because I think this is really important. Yesterday, we went to Baltimore, Maryland. He announced a $3 billion project in Baltimore. That $3 billion project is going to help 27 states. 11 of those states have Republican governors. This is what this president cares about. Making sure that people who are in need get the assistance that they need. Right? He talked about port infrastructure, and we went to Baltimore. Obviously, we know what happened a couple of months ago with one of the bridges there. $147 million for Maryland in particular. But just think about it: 27 states, 11 states are Republican governors. And we're talking about the Inflation Reduction Act, which only Democrats voted for. Republicans didn't vote for that. Republicans tried to repeal that. Let's not forget what the speaker said yesterday about ACA, wanted to repeal ACA, which would hurt millions of Americans. And so that's what the president wants to focus on, which is why he wanted to make sure he clarified what he said. But if there is hateful rhetoric that is being said about communities, Americans, communities across this country, he's going to speak out about it. And it's not the first time that he's done so.
So did President Biden make a mistake in his comments yesterday?
He clarified what he said. It was very clear what he was trying to do. He was wanting to make sure that what he said was not taken out of context, and he clarified that.
This isn't the first time the White House has had to defend or clarify the president's comments.
Nobody's defending the president himself. This is the president himself wanting to clarify what he said. He wanted to make sure that it was not taken out of context. These are the president's words. Nobody here is defending. We are laying out what the president said himself, and he wanted to clarify that.
So those comments were made as the vice president was speaking about unity at the Ellipse last night. Did the president speak to the vice president before or after that speech?
Well, I think in a gaggle that the vice president did not too long ago, she confirmed that she had a conversation with the president. The president was very proud of the vice president. She gave a historic speech last night, and he certainly wanted to congratulate her.
So that was after the speech.
That was after
and did the president make any reference to these remarks or apologize to the vice
What
president?
I can say is I'm not going to get into private discussions here. That's not something that we do from the podium. I'm not going to do that. But the president and the vice president speak regularly. That is not uncommon. She is the vice president. He is the president. So obviously they have direct communications pretty often. And he did have a conversation last night because he was proud of her historic speech, and he wanted to congratulate her. And again, they speak regularly.
And did you or anybody else speak to the president last night to seek clarification by what he meant once realizing it was being taken out of context?
I was in the room when he delivered his remarks last night and during the live stream, and what I can say is he himself wanted to make sure that there was clarity in what he was trying to say. Again, we are talking about hateful rhetoric, a hateful rhetoric that was being said. And the president wanted to be very clear. He also feels, and we've been doing this is nothing new here, for the past more than 3 years. When hateful rhetoric is being said, the president believes it's important to speak to it and call that out. And that's what the president was referring to, a particular comedian from just Saturday night. You all covered this at Madison Square Garden, who was spewing hate against the Puerto Rican community, and the president felt that he needed to say something. At the same time, he wanted to make sure that his words were not taken out of context, and so he himself wanted to make sure that a statement was put out to clarify it. Okay.
One more on this.
Sure.
Was the president reading from a script? It looked like he was reading from notes. Were those comments written out for him in some form?
Okay. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Audrey.
No, it's okay.
No, finish. I want you to finish your statement. I'm sorry.
It would be useful to know whether there was a prepared remark that he was reading from, and if so, whether that should have been changed or whether he was editing.
A couple of things. I'm not going to get into specific here. It's not unusual for a president or the vice president or any elected official to have notes in front of them when they're speaking to a crowd or to a group of people. That is not unusual. What I can say is the president wanted to make sure that his words were not being taken out of context, and so he wanted to clarify, and that's what you heard from the president. He was very aware, and I would say I think it's really important that you have a president that cares about clarifying what they said, and that's what you see from this president. He took it upon himself to clarify what he said, and I think that says a lot about who Joe Biden is, that he wanted to make sure it was clear that he was talking about the comedian and the hateful rhetoric that was coming from this comedian just a couple of days ago.
There have been a lot of comparisons made to the Hillary Clinton remark using the word deplorables. Has the president indicated to you any concern that this one comment that he has clarified now could have similar reverberations to that previous comment? I mean, he was certainly active in politics then and was aware of the impact that had.
I'm not going to go back and litigate 2016. I'm just not going to do that from here. He was not speaking about Trump supporters. He was not as a whole. He was not speaking about people who support a different candidate. That is not what he was doing. And he clarified that in his statement last night. That was not his intent. He wanted to be very clear about that, hence, again, why he said he was speaking about comments that were made by the comedian. And let's not forget, we can't forget, what we heard was the demonization of Latinos. That's what we heard of a community. By the way, and I know you all know this, Puerto Ricans are Americans. He wanted to make sure that we speak out against hateful rhetoric. It's important to do that. Was he talking about Trump supporters? Absolutely not. As a whole, absolutely not.
First, on the comments last night, was the president aware in the moment, as soon as he had made those comments, that they could potentially be misconstrued and be problematic, or was it only after conversations with aides?
I'm not going to get into a process. I think what's important is the president put out a statement and wanted to make sure that he clarified himself, clarified what he meant here, and this is something that he wanted to do, and that's what you saw from this president last night, and I think that's important to note. I would also say, and I said this already, and I'll say it again, from day one, this president has always said that he will be president for all Americans. It doesn't matter if you voted for him or not, and that continues to be the case. He was making a particular point, a specific point about a comedian and the hateful rhetoric that was heard by all of us on Sunday, but I'm not going to get into the back and forth. I think what's important to note is that the president himself wanted to clarify this.
There have been a few times when the president has spoken off the cuff and appeared to be off message or had comments that have needed to be walked back or cleaned up. And I'm wondering, going into this final very high stakes stretch of the election, if there's going to be any changes to preparation or format for any of the final events that he's going to be participating in.
The president looks forward to being out there talking to the American people. You heard me talk about yesterday and how important that was, $3 billion in port infrastructure funding that's going to make a difference in 27 states. 11 of them are red states. This is what the president cares about, to deliver for all Americans. And so that was an event, that was a great event. We talked about the $147 million he talked about this, that's going to go to the port. And not just like dealing with infrastructure, but also creating good-paying jobs, thousands of good-paying jobs. And so the president's going to continue to do that. I don't have any changes to speak to from here. And, you saw the president in Pittsburgh just this past weekend as well. And this is more of a campaign. That was a campaign stop, so I'm going to be really mindful. But he saw him talking to laborers and union members. And they were thrilled to see him and very thankful for the work that he's done on behalf of union workers over the past 3+ years. And so that's what you're going to continue to see from the president. It doesn't matter if it's because of the election is a couple of days away. This is what he's going to go do in the next 3 months. And I think the president enjoys being out there, and nothing is going to stop him from doing that.
Just following up on 2 questions from my colleagues for the sake of clarity, was the president reading from prepared remarks last night?
Look, the president had certainly, it's not unusual for a president, vice president, or any elected official to have notes on what they want to say, prepared to say. I'm just not going to get into specifics here. I think what's important to note here is the president wanted to clarify what he said. That is what is important. And for a president to do that, I think is important. And I think that shows the integrity of this president to want to make sure that, hey, I want to make really clear I was talking about the comedian and the hateful rhetoric that was coming out of his remarks on Sunday. I'm not going to get into specifics here and just leave it as that. I think what's important for the American people to note is that the president wanted to make sure that he clarified his statement and is going to continue to be a president for all. It doesn't matter if you voted for him or not.
And then just second, the vice president is facing questions about his comments today. So does the president regret at all the distraction this is causing from her campaign in these final days?
Here's what I'll say. Yes, the vice president spoke to this, and she said herself that the president clarified these statements. Look, what what I will say, and she also said, obviously, and you all saw this, that she believes that it doesn't matter who you vote for, right? People should have their ability to make their decisions for themselves, which is something that this president also agrees on. And I'm not going to. You all are covering this election. You all can speak to if this is a distraction or not. What I can speak to is the president wanted to make sure that he clarified his statement, and he did so.
And the vice president did say today she strongly disagrees with anybody who offers criticism of people based on who they vote for and why they vote for them. Mm-hmm. Does the president view that differently?
Yes, he feels the same way. He feels the same way as what she stated. But that's something that the president has been saying for some time. He has. He has been saying that it doesn't matter if you voted for him or not. He's your president. He's a president for all Americans, whether you're in a red state or a blue state. This is something that the president certainly believes. And he has been saying himself. He has said this himself. And that's why he didn't want what he said to be taken out of context. That's why he wanted to make sure it was clarified, because that is indeed what he believes. So he agrees with the vice president. Okay, Willie.
You touched on this just a little bit about the president agreeing with the vice president, but will the president be a little bit more careful in his upcoming events? I know you can't speak to the campaign events, but in his remarks, what is he going to do differently in terms of what he says to the American people for fear of isolating someone with his comments?
Look, here's the thing. You have a president who wanted to make sure what he said was not taken out of context and took that extra step to clarify. I think that tells you where the president is. He took the extra step to clarify. And you don't see that from many elected officials. You certainly didn't see that from the former president. And this president wanted to make sure it was not taken out of context. And so he wanted to clarify. I think that tells you everything that you need to know.